Chairperson.
Good afternoon.
Chairperson.
I think it has just gone past 2 o'clock. Let me make use of the opportunity to welcome you on the meeting of the Standing Committee of Public Accounts of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. This is a virtual meeting and it's held in terms of the rules that governs virtual meetings of the Provincial Parliament of the Western Cape. Can I just get an indication of honorable members that are present as part of the meeting, that are joining the meeting?
Thank you, Chairperson. Matlodi Maseko in the meeting.
Thank you very much, Honorable Maseko.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon,
Thank you.
Chairperson Regan Allen.
Thank you very much, Honorable Allen.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. It's Derek America, member of the committee.
Welcome. Thanks very much, Honorable America. Any other members? If there are none, those that are not here yet, we'll get them along the way. Now, Mr. Davids, can I get an indication of the apologies that you have received so that we can have those for record purposes.
Chairperson, good afternoon, members and delegates, Honourable Minister. Chairperson, I've received 2 apologies from Member Klejo and from Honourable Member Bartman, and Member Allen is alternating for Member Bartman. And then as well for this afternoon with Provincial Treasury, we have an apology from the Honourable Minister Maynier.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Mr. David. Now, honorable members, the purpose of the meeting is to look at the items on the agenda that was circulated to you. On the agenda we'll be looking at the presentation of the Department of Human Settlement in the form of their audit committee, as well as the visits that they have and oversight that they've held over 11 municipalities. And then after that, we are also going to have a presentation from the Provincial Treasury on the issues of local content. Now, I just want to get an indication, Mr. Davids, whether have the departments already joined us, especially the Department of Human Settlement?
Yes, Chairperson, the department is in chair, and I see the Honourable Minister Simmons is also in the meeting.
No, then thank you very much. Then, honourable members, I am not going to waste any time then. If there are no any maybe issues or points you'd like to raise, I'm going to hand over to the department and let me make use of the opportunity to welcome the Honourable Minister for being part of the meetings and for joining us, and also the department. Also, I must say, Minister, I am very happy that you were able to join, because I know you were in the Southern Cape and there were some issues you were attending to there. I thought maybe you might not be able to attend. So I am very happy that you were able to attend. Thank you very much. What I'm going to do then, Honourable Minister, I'm going to hand over to you if there are some few remarks you would like to make, and maybe you can also introduce some of the team that are with you, and thereafter I will hand over to the heads of the department. Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. Thank you, Honourable members of the committee. Once again, it's a pleasure to appear before the committee and to account, but also to answer your pertinent questions. So I'm looking forward to a very vigorous engagement. I will immediately hand over to my team to introduce themselves. Honourable Chairperson, if it's in order with you, but we do have very competent and senior staff members part of this afternoon's meeting to engage your committee. Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. It's Francis de Wet. I'm the CFO for the department. I'm just standing in for the acting HOD, Ms. Maricela. She's on her way to the airport and will join us soon. She was with the Minister in Bito, where there is a very sensitive issue, and she will join us just now, as soon as she is in the airport itself. With me, excuse me, I've got Mr. Brian Denton. He's the acting CD for Human Settlement Implementation. And then I've got Melvin Stoffels. He's the Director for Financial Management, and the internal control part and the inspections falls under his portfolio. Then I also have Munira Ali. She's the acting director for communication. So any thing that needs to be communicated coming from this meeting will be communicated by in our department. Thank you, Chair. And the first part is the audit committee. So we will sit back and let the audit committee then deal with the first part, if it's okay with you. Thank you.
No problem. The audit committee can go ahead.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Honourable Chairperson. Good afternoon, Honourable members. My name is Amin Ahmad, I'm the chairperson of the Social Cluster Audit Committee. I have a presentation. Basically, I will be responding to the questions that have been raised, and the question primarily focuses on the assurance gaps. I'd like to share the slide in question, and I'd just like to confirm that the slide is visible. The question was the assurance gaps that were not covered by internal audit and the coverage gap. So there were five risks that were not part of the coverage process of internal audit. And these five, at that stage, remember this is the internal audit plans for 2019-2020. We currently are looking at internal audit plans for 2021-2022. So it is dated to an extent. These risks could have moved somewhat, but the risks that internal audit did not have resources to cover was the first risk of lack of access to bulk services. The business process was under municipal human settlement planning. The second one was unauthorized access to critical systems or related information under information management. The third one was adequate mechanisms to provide effective customer relations feedback under stakeholder management. The fourth one was theft of cash from the Rental Housing Tribunal. And the fifth one was training and development opportunities are not utilized effectively, and that was under human resources management. So from a risk perspective, these were the risks that was not subjected to independent assurance. This does not mean that these risks were not covered, because these risks were engaged with via the monthly ExCo meetings. It was monitored through the quarterly ERMCO sessions where the Enterprise Risk Management Committee had met, and they were supported by Enterprise Risk Management assurance activities from the DDG Corporate Assurances offices. Other measures that management had put in place was the rollout of fraud prevention plan and the Western Cape anti-corruption strategy. Here again, this was monitored via the quarterly ERMCO sessions. So while there was a coverage gap that internal audit was not able to cover via their resources and their prioritizations, this does not mean that management did not have measures to mitigate some of these risks. Second is, in addition, it doesn't mean that these risks materialized, but these risks would focus management's attention by identifying these risks upfront in a proactive manner, and management then could be more conscious and cognizant of these risks if and when they do materialize. So that, Mr. Chair, answers the issue of the first part of the question. The second part related to the reports of internal, the reports of the briefing document of the audit committee, where in the briefing document I spoke of certain emerging risks, and these emerging risks again are risks that we've made the department aware of. The department, via interactions with us, we've uncovered some of these emerging risks. These are risks that haven't materialized, but these are risks that could emerge or could emerge if the circumstances are rife for that. The first risk that we've mentioned was the componentization of assets, as per our previous presentation we've given to SCOPA. And this is a risk that the AG has spoken about for several years, where assets are broken down and assets are needed to be recorded individually wherever possible within its different components. It's not yet an audit requirement, but it has been on the horizon to become an audit requirement. The second emerging risk was inventory disclosure. this is not yet an audit requirement. However, it poses increasingly onerous requirements on the department with their manual systems to mitigate this risk when inventory disclosure becomes an audit requirement. The third risk that we've mentioned was the integrated financial management system piloting in the Western Cape. The IFMS was a National Treasury initiative, and this has been in the making for almost 15 years. 3 or 4 years ago, there was great impetus where National Treasury had finally appointed Oracle for the integrated financial management system to be piloted in certain provinces. Western Cape was one of the provinces. A few departments in the Eastern Cape and Gauteng were also chosen. And with the piloting of any software, there are risks attached to that. And part of the risks would be the department would need to initially run parallel systems using the legacy systems of BAS, Purcell, Logos, while integrating the Oracle IFMS system. Secondly, the systems by their nature, IT systems by their nature, are never delivered complete, and that would pose risks, financial risks to the financial statements, risks to performance management, collection of data, data loss, data integrity, data pollution, over and above duplication of the departmental resources. So that we put in as a risk. IFMS has gone quiet for the last 2 years or so, and we're not sure what National Treasury's plans are for IFMS. The other risk that we've mentioned was the move from clean audits to performance auditing. We have, if SCOPA members can recall, over the last 5 or 6 years, we've mentioned that clean audits is not an end in itself. Performance auditing, and where we look at the effective, efficient, and economic utilization of resources, is where the department needs to position itself, and service delivery. So as we move towards more intensified performance auditing, there could be instances where we could lose our clean audits, but if we've intensified service delivery and we've delivered services more effectively, more efficiently, and more economically, then it's a trade-off that the department would deem worthwhile, because the public would have obtained better service. The other emerging risk that we've mentioned in our previous presentations was the extended pressure on safety-related resources towards xenophobia and gender-based violence, and these could lead to other unintended consequences. The other emerging risk that we've mentioned was the emergence of community development forums, and these community development forums were stronger in certain provinces, but they were not absent in the Western Cape, and these development forums threaten the viability and completion of projects. Viability from a financial perspective, because the department would have awarded tenders to certain service providers to deliver, and if these community development forums threaten the financial viability via extraction, financial extraction and others, it could threaten the viability and sustainability of these service providers. It could also delay the completion of projects. The further emerging risk that we've mentioned was community non-cooperation when sites are required to be cleared for construction to commence. And one could understand from the dwellers on these land sites, when they're asked to move, they're not guaranteed that they will be getting a premises once completion, construction is completed. The other emerging risk that we mentioned was COVID-19 and its impact on service delivery, and its impact on staff productivity, its impact on on-site interactions. These are all at that stage where unquantifiable risks that the department was facing. Those risks were, amongst others, ICT risks, productivity risks, budgetary risks, social risks, and performance risks. We've seen some of these risks begin to materialize. The budgetary risks, for example, the impact of the slowdown in the economy and the impact of COVID has led to budget cuts on a continuous basis, and even budget cuts going into the future. So some of these risks have begun to materialize, and some of these risks could still materialize in the future. So, Mr. Chair, I would leave it at that. If there are any questions, then I would be available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the Audit Committee. What I'll do, honorable members, I would like to also just give the department as well to do its next presentation, so that when we ask, we can just ask across the board. Can we hand over to the department?
Thank you, Chairperson. The acting HOD is also now in the meeting, but I will hand over to Melville Stoffels, who will do the presentation for us on the inspections that was done by to the municipalities, and the findings, as well as what mitigators were put in place to ensure that it doesn't happen again. Thank you. Melvin.
Thank you, CFO. Can I ask the meeting to project the presentation, please?
Yes, Mr. David, are we going to put it from your side, the presentation, or is it the department?
I just wanted to ascertain that myself, Chairperson, if we must project it, or the department chair.
Chair, I would like from your side to project it.
Okay. Okay. Can you go ahead then, Mr. David?
No problem, Chair. If you can just give me 1 minute, I'll just put it on quickly.
Dustin Lizette, I'll share the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Kluter. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, and also good afternoon, honourable members. I'm Melvin Stoffels. Today I want to actually respond on the SCOPA resolution. Next slide, please. The resolution actually, it is the SCOPA resolution that emanated from our annual report, and actually specifically under B, section B of annual report, and that's also under internal control, where the department demonstrated in the annual report that we did financial inspection at the 11 municipalities, and basically it is to demonstrate our oversight role that we're supposed to play, and that we do play basically to actually ensure that monies that are being paid over to municipalities, that money is being actually utilized for the intended purpose. And that purpose is basically funds that must be actually paid over to contractors in respect of our projects and municipalities. So basically the committee wanted to know that those 11 visits to municipalities, what was the findings basically, and what mechanism had the department in place to ensure that funds, if any, are being recovered where it was not spent or where it was partially defrauded on the side of the municipalities, and that whole process. Next slide, please. Here, I just basically indicated 11 municipalities that is under discussion here. It's Oudtshoorn, Theewater, Kloof, Witzenberg, Breedevallei, Saldanha, Swartland, Mossel Bay, Stellenbosch, Cedarburg, Naisna, and also George. Thank you. Next slide, please. Then the mechanism that we have in place to monitor and actually do oversight over this HSDG funding to municipality. Number one, the department have an SOP that actually document the process of monitoring these funds that are being paid to the 25 municipalities that resort under the Western Cape government. And that is done in terms of Section 38 IJ of the PFMA. Municipalities from their side are compelled to complete a compliance certificate and a reconciliation in terms of J38 of the PMA, and that is signed by the NM. Oversight and monitoring are thus executed through this written assurance that we receive on a monthly basis through this compliance certificate and also a reconciliation of monies that was received by the municipalities and also spent to the contractors in respect of project at the municipality. This certificate basically that must be submitted in compliance every month in according to the Circular 2 of 2014. There was also a supplementary one of 2020. And any matter of concern emanating from the verification of the reconciliation submitted by municipalities is escalated to the MM of that municipality and also to our CFO and then also to the head of our department. Non-compliance to actually submit this information is actually in terms of J38 is a non-compliance, and that is also been escalated to a HOD and an MM in cases where this apply. The department side, we ensure that funds paid to mission are being utilized for that intended purpose. In other words, we follow our money. We don't just pay money to municipality and we leave it and we don't have control over that money to ensure that it is utilized for the intended purpose. Monies that are being paid to municipality that remain unutilized, we actually recover those money. So at the end of the day, that it basically can be utilized for the purpose that it should be utilized. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now, specifically, if I refer to the visit that we actually did to Ocho municipality, and that was now from the 3rd to the 4th of October 2019. And if we look, what was the finding there? The finding was monthly reconciliation indicated that the opening balance that they have at the municipality did not provide a true reflection of the balance. The balance at the municipality does not reflect a true reflection. It was determined that money that's supposed to be paid to building contractors are not being paid regularly and on time. The department intervened basically by raising the issue. We addressed it and we also resolved it. And how did we resolve it? Basically, that we identified that the department struggled to do the payments. So from the department side, and also we indicated we would assist, and the government also agreed to it is a problem, and that's why we decided that the department would not channel the money to the municipality. The department would pay directly the contractors involved. And if you look at the current status, that is still where the MM indicated that basically any acting CFO at that time, that we should rather pay the contractors directly. And we say that actually practice still exists, and that is how we ensure that the funds are being paid for the intended purpose. The department also ensure that the contractors are being paid. And when we say pay on time, and we say regularly, meaning when it's due, basically it's paid and that it needs to be paid. And then also we have this policy also that it needs to be paid within 30 days. Next slide, please. Then the next municipality that we visited on the 23rd of October 2019 and also on 18 and to 19 November was that the municipality did not submit the monthly reconciliation and compliance certificate. Hence, the department could not determine that the balance at the municipality was justified, and payments actually to contractors was actually justified. So like I mentioned earlier, this was a non-compliance because they did not comply to submit the reconciliation and certificate on a monthly basis. The visit to the municipality actually highlighted the consequences of non-compliance by the municipality. And the non-compliance can actually result that we as a department have the right to withhold the funds, because we can't determine whether the funds is being utilized for the intended purpose. And it's also that can also result that service levels can actually be hampered. So these consequences has been spelled out to the municipality at the time. But what I can say from the visit, the municipality now can submit the monthly reconciliation and compliance with the reconfirms that money are being used for the intended purpose, and all the supporting documentation in respect of payments verified and justified that money was actually paid to boarding contractors. Now, if we refer to the supporting documentation, I refer basically much more than just an invoice. It's a verification that there was actually value for money. It is actually that payments are being made on milestones, certain milestone has been achieved. That's why they're entitled to payment, and we have the justification to make the payment. Next slide, please. Now, that was the first two municipalities that I did now, and the other 9 that we visited, that is listed there in the time, it is actually finding of a similar actually nature. That's why we clustered together, and all these findings that I would mention now all apply to these 9 municipalities. Next slide. The findings at these 9 municipalities was basically the opening balance as per the reconciliation submitted. It's actually did not reconcile to the records of the department. So we did not agree the balance at these municipalities. And we actually found what the problem, why did not actually reconcile or balance, and that they were using the resolution amount basic as an opening balance, while it should be a balance, the balance of money, only money paid over, actual money paid over municipality. So that was actually a skewed picture that was actually be presented at the municipality. So the end of the day, where we intervene basically is we went there personally, obviously with the visit, we actually verified and corrected this balance that is now exactly in line with the department, so that we are now aligned what's at the municipality, the balance, that also reflected now in our records. The claims submitted by the municipality and verified by the department confirm thus through that whole process now that the money was actually indeed paid over to building contractors. The current status is basically a regular monthly reconciliation compliance certificate are now being submitted by the municipality, and it is once again also actually demonstrate that the money are being used for the intended purpose, and then all the documentation also that we verified, justified the money paid to contractors. And hereby also the department once again ensure that the money has been are being paid within the 30 days. Next slide. Next slide, please. In a summary, basically, what did the 11 visit municipalities, what did we achieve? The department can confirm that all funds paid over to municipality was indeed spent for the intended purpose, hence confirmation that no municipality defrauded the department. The incorrect balances at municipality that was a concern were subsequently corrected in line with the department's records. And then the risk at Ocho municipality where building contracts were not paid regularly was mitigated through the paying of building directly, not via the municipality. The non-compliance, and that was found at Witzenberg in terms of 38 IJ of the PFA, was highlighted and addressed with reference to the consequences, and that consequence, as already mentioned, was if they do not comply, that we have the right not to pay funds that are not being accounted for. Chair, that is my presentation.
Thank you very much, Sir. Now, honorable members, there is the presentation. You have seen there was a presentation from the audit committee. There was also a presentation from the department regarding the inspection that they've conducted to municipalities. Can I get an indication of members who would like to ask questions? Honorable Maseko.
Thank you, Chairperson. And again, thank you for the presentation. And I think it's more detailed for us to get the clarity of some of the issues that were raised in the annual report. Just a quick one. I want to find out, and I'm trying to open on the slide of the department on the mechanisms in place to monitor the HSDG funding to municipalities. The last bullet on the slide 5 talked to the department saying that they will ensure that all funds unutilized at municipalities to be paid back and funds not utilized for the intended purposes to be recovered from municipalities. I want to find out how are they going to do that, or how are they doing that? Is there a regulation or a policy that is empowering the department to have a time frame to be able to recover that money? That's number one. And I think I'm asking that based on the AG with the consequence management that is trying to implement, that it has been difficult to be able to deal with some of the departments or the entities, not this Department of Human Settlements, of course, to try to recover the monies that they used towards our municipalities. And I'll make an example with the Beaufort West, with the issue of the toilets that the department is trying to recover the money. In that instance, how are you going to go about, or did you receive the money by now? And if not, how are you going to be able to receive that money or recover that money to make sure that it becomes a very clear example to us that how are you empowered to be able to fast track that, to use that money to what is supposed to be used for? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Maseko. Honorable America, and thereafter Honorable Ngondo.
Thank you, Chair. I want to just start off with making a remark in the sense that the presentation that we've received now relates to matters that took place, a while ago. It's quite dated. Part of the sort of corrective measures that were taken were sort of outlined. And then there's also a sort of column that, speaks to the current status. Now, the first question that I would like to ask is, in terms of the current status, is it as it is currently that those sort of non-compliance matters and that of the usurping of the function of municipalities are still being executed by the department, as is the case with regard to the Witzenberg municipality and Oudtshoorn municipality. And secondly, it could, well, what is the reason that those reconciliations and the mistakes that occur with regard to the sort of reconciliation reports, have you sort of, what are the underlying reasons? Is that a result of not having the human resources that is capable of doing it, or is it simply just negligence on the part of officials within those municipalities? And then lastly, Chair, is that it is pleasing to note that part of the inspection and what emanated from the visits and the interrogation of these anomalies that occurred, that but regardless of the shortcomings, that the department received value for money, and there was no funds that were misappropriated or in a fraudulent way ended up in the pockets of people who are not supposed to be beneficiaries. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Ngondlo.
No, thank you, Chairperson. Good afternoon to members and the teams that are presenting. Chair, let me start with the audit committee. I'm interested on this emerging risk, or one of the risks, I think, that was referred to, I think, on the 3 areas. And I could not pick up how the audit committee with the department are dealing with this particular risk. The one related to GBV and xenophobia, the one related to community development forums and community non-cooperation. And my concern, I think perhaps I need clarity when I think the report states that community development forums are a threat to the financial stability of projects. I think that statement is just loaded. Perhaps it could be clarified. What does that mean? And in the province, because I think reference was made that at the time these community development forums were existing in other provinces. I'm not sure whether are they existing in this province and where, in which areas where they've demonstrated being a risk to the financial sustainability or stability of projects. What does that mean? And I mean, my experience coming from a community, long ago, I think more than 10 years ago, I come from Guguletu. There's been a Guguletu Development Forum. I've worked with a Kailicha Development Forum. So I've never understood and I've never had a case where these forums are a threat to community projects. So maybe if that could be explained, what does that mean? And in which areas were such situations, where such forums were a threat, and in what way specifically, and what was done to resolve that particular risk as it seems it's standing, including the concept or what is said to be community non-cooperation. And in that one, if I can get clarity, that the last time I understood government projects is that these government projects, they need to be introduced, especially when they take place, the infrastructure projects that are taking place in communities. They need to be introduced to communities well in advance so that people are aware, and obviously those communities, so that you mitigate this particular non-cooperation, depending what that means in this particular context, which I'm hoping it will be explained. Because I am not sure how a community becomes a non-cooperating party, to a project in that specific community. And I would want real examples of where such has happened and what has and how has that been mitigated, and the extent to which that concept of project steering committee, which supposedly to include as part of that your community lies in your ward community, which is your community structures, which must understand the project. Where exactly is the disjuncture where we get to a point where the community becomes a threat to a project that is supposed to benefit the community? I think this is where I'm missing, I think, that particular risk. Then, Chair, coming to the report of the department and what has been done, I hear and I appreciate the fact that the visits actually helped to ensure the mechanisms that the colleague was presenting earlier on, which exist, because when they were tested, because the question I think was on internal controls. So the fact that there were mechanisms of monthly meetings and all of that proved when there were non-compliance, which also the department is confirming here that it had to take them a visit to those municipalities for those many mechanisms to actually be realized. Now, my interest here, Chair, is that one, the department had to pay in Oudtshoorn contractors. Is that how it's supposed to be? What exactly was the problem of that specific municipality for it to be able to meet its financial obligations of paying the contractors? Because I'm not sure how sustainable is this. Is that what the department is going to do in all the municipalities that are unable to pay? And I would have been interested why the municipality could not pay the contractors. Now you have a situation where the department must take over and actually pay the contractors, because you have to fix the problem than trying to paper over it, by being an alternative. And I'm asking if, as part of the SOP, that is what the departments must do when municipalities are failing to pay contractors, or you build the capacity, you understand what is the problem, and you ensure that contractors or the municipality are empowered and capable to pay contractors. Again, I think what this non-compliance, I think it is indicated, I think, in the summary on the 9 municipalities, and I'm not sure whether it's the same with Witzenberg, that the municipalities, it is reported, were using the resolution amount, not the actual amount. Now, my question there, what was making the municipalities in the 9 municipalities that we have identified not to use the actual amount? Is it a case that they did not understand, they were not aware that they are supposed to be putting the actual amount instead of the resolution amount, as you have said, which led to the non-compliance? Is it a situation that those that are responsible for this function are not skilled enough to understand what is it from a compliance point of view? I think for me, this is my interest, because internal controls are about that. The fact that the department would have engaged and visited and later, become a big brother to try and resolve the problems of the municipality do not help us to understand whether indeed after you have left, the municipality understands, or that problem that was there has been fixed at a municipal level, not because the province is always going to have to go back, and assist. So I'm interested to understand what was the cause of this particular non-compliance. What is the root cause that actually resulted in such? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Allen.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. I'm going to keep it short. I am covered, but I wanted to check via from the department. Have we done a cost analysis on what it actually cost in terms of the interventions, which is welcomed from the Department of Human Settlements in terms of the interventions? And do we have a cost on that? It's the year 2021, Chairperson, and for municipalities to still struggle, knowing that we have major issues within our country, and to still not be compliant on, from where I'm sitting, on fairly basic elements in terms of their role and the legislation and what they are required to do. That just boggles my mind that in the year 2021, that still happens. But do we have a cost in terms of what the department is spending on these interventions where municipalities are failing? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Allen. I'm sure maybe the Honorable Minister and the HOD can kind of relate with some of the questions that are being asked in view of the experience and the meeting they might have had today earlier in Pito. But anyway, I just had two questions from my side. That is, I think in the presentation of the audit committee, there was something mentioned about the theft of cash, which is related to, in the presentation, there was something mentioned about the theft of cash in one of the housing project. Maybe if the audit committee can just elaborate more on that. And then the other question will be on the issue of the IMFS. I know it's not the first time that is being reported to us that we are one of the pilot project. Might assist maybe if the chairperson of the audit committee can just maybe indicate as to how are we progressing on that as a pilot project, how are we doing, and what lessons maybe we can learn from that integrated financial management system. Thank you very much. Now, I think what I'll do, let me ask maybe from the audit committee side first respond on some of the questions that were asked, and thereafter I will give the department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. It's Amin Ahmad. Mr. Chairperson, the question that Nkondlo raised are very pertinent questions. And I think I'd like to, when we've mentioned that the emergence of community development forums that threaten the viability and completion of projects, I think we're trying to use an innocent term. I think I agree totally with the Honourable Member Nkondlo that the community needs to be part of these processes, and we need to empower the community and let the community grow. A reference here was being made to the crude term was construction cartels that have plagued construction sites in many parts of the country. And these construction cartels had very little to do with emergent community developers that wanted to empower themselves, but they were cartels that threatened the projects had they not been granted personal benefits. And it was almost those cartels that we were referring to that would threaten viability and completion of projects. Because if those cartels, for doing no works, would want to extract favor and benefit from these companies, you'd find companies abandoning the projects or unable to sustain themselves due to payment of threat money to these cartels. So I agree that we support community development forums, and perhaps this is something that the department should be looking at in each of the projects. How are we getting community, the real community development forums and the community artisans, etc., involved in their projects. To what extent are they doing that? So I take the point that it's not the legitimate community development forums that threaten the viability, but it's the construction cartels or the illegitimate community development forums where individuals want to empower themselves for no empowerment, but merely out of extracting benefits for themselves. Then the other point about community non-cooperation when sites are required to be cleared for construction to commence. Here again, I totally agree that communities need to be taken into confidence. Communities need to be given the assurance that this is for the benefit of the community. The challenges lie where certain people are not necessarily high up on the housing list or not guaranteed that they will be granted accommodation when they move from their current place of abode that's blocking development. And then you have non-cooperation from people that are not the beneficiaries of what's been completed. It's something that the department can expand on, whether they have met such resistance from beneficiaries that are not immediately on the list of the completed housing units or not. So those are the points raised by Honourable Nkondlo. And then the chairperson raised the point of theft of cash. This is a potential risk. It is not a risk that is materializing, but if the department identifies this within their risk processes as a potential risk, then the department would look at what mitigating measures they have. So it hasn't materialized, Mr. Chair, but it's just a risk that they need to be conscious of and to ensure that the controls and processes that they have in place at the rental tribunal mitigates against the realization of the risk of a theft of cash. And then, Mr. Chair, the IFMS pilot projects, unfortunately, it hasn't progressed very far in the last 2 to 3 years. National Treasury has been embroiled in certain matters related to the rollout of the IFMS projects. And you may have read that National Treasury themselves had fruitless and wasteful expenditure findings against them by the AGSA because National Treasury had paid the Oracle licenses, but we haven't fully rolled out the usage of it. There were certain challenges with service providers that were contracted initially for the IFMS rollout, and that rollout has not progressed in the last 2 or 3 years. So fortunately or unfortunately, the Western Cape has not yet been roped into the actual rollout, although the Western Cape was part of the initial discussions. But in terms of the rollout, that has not yet taken place. Mr. Chair, I hope to have answered the questions. And any questions can be elaborated by the department.
Thank you very much. Department?
Thank you, Chairperson. Pilar, do you want to go first?
HOD?
Yeah. Thank you, Chairperson. Apologies once again for joining the meeting a bit late. I would elaborate.
I see the minister's hand is up. Maybe let's the minister first.
Not a problem, Chairperson.
My apologies, Chair, I'm a bit slow on the raise your hand function at the moment. Now, Chair, as you alluded to, and a good example of one of the things which Member Nkondlo asked for is where the acting HOD and myself were this morning in Pito, where the municipality played a huge role in actually that the project became so far behind for various administrative reasons, which is what my acting HOD will touch on, I believe. But where literally an entire project was stopped. I had to go down this morning and my acting HOD to try to find an amicable solution to move that project forward again. And the secondary issue is that ultimately the beneficiaries from Kolweni Bosisgif, I mean, they became a lot frustrated, and as you're well aware, the N2 was closed for a span of 4 days, and it only opened up a bit more than an hour ago after my intervention together with my acting HOD. But these are some of the dynamics which me and my department deal with as risks. Another good example, Honorable Chairperson, is Fjell-Drift, where I was last year, where units were complete, and you started alluding to that, where certain beneficiaries were not high on the waiting list. Damage was caused to the units, delaying the occupation of those units by the true beneficiaries by up to 4.5 months. So that is where, once again, community dynamics of beneficiaries which are lower down on the list play a huge role for us to actually ultimately preventing us from handing over these units to beneficiaries. Honorable Chair, these are practical examples which, as the Minister, together with my department officials, we regularly, sadly, have to deal with. And more so also when you go into these communities to actually commence a project, which is a new phenomenon that we need to deal with. The chairperson of the audit committee referred to it as cartels. What we've experienced, and our Forest Village site is a classic example where individuals which group themselves and call themselves community forums ultimately prohibited or attempted to prohibit the construction commencing until they get a piece of the pie, so to speak. And we ultimately had to approach the High Court for an interdict to that specific site. So these are all of the dynamics and risks which we refer to when we talk about community dynamics and individuals within those dynamics. Thank you very much, Chair. I'll hand over to my acting HOD.
Thanks, Minister HOD.
Thanks, Chairperson. The Minister has touched on what I wanted to add regarding the emerging risks on Community Development Forum and the extent to which the department involves the community in these developments. Member Nkondlo, we sign social compacts for each project that we are planning to implement within these communities, and this is agreed to by all parties, and it sets out the roles and responsibilities, and we also workshop the communities in terms of the project. The problem, as Minister has alluded, comes when certain people within that community want to go against that which was agreed to up front, and they end up stalling the project. Case in point, in Joslovo, in Langa, that project now has been stalled. We've been working with that community for the past 10 years. And again, due to lack of cooperation from some community members, and I must qualify that it's not necessarily the entire community, but some community members who feel that their voices needs to be heard louder than the rest of the community, they resulted in a situation where we could not move with the project. We identified a decanting area where we said we would relocate the people temporarily so that we can put the infrastructure, and then they would be relocated back. In that incident, we even gave firm commitment that those that qualify will be brought back to the project, and those that do not qualify, we will provide service sites for them. But even with such an intervention and communication to the project steering committee that we were working with in the community at large, the area where we had identified for TRA was invaded. The actual TRA units themselves were destroyed. As a result, we're not able to continue with that project. And in actual fact, we have resolved to rather stop with the development because we've got nowhere else to decant the people to. Another classic example is the case of Boys Town, where sadly 2 community liaison officers were killed again by the so-called cartels because they were not necessarily agreeing and acceding to whatever the demands they were bringing. So we do try to engage with the community through their elected leaders, and there's also great contestation even within the PSC and the leadership space. We have in the previous financial year brought in the NGOs to even assist us with some of the mediation, to mediate between us and the communities. It has paid off in certain instances, but mainly within the city of Cape Town, it is a big problem. And as the chairperson highlighted in his report, it's one of the emerging risks that has now materialized. And I think in the morning we presented to our standing committee our targets when it comes to informal settlements upgrading were not met, and by far. And again, this is as a result of this lack of cooperation by the communities, notwithstanding the fact that we've got these social compacts that were signed. And then the issue around Oudtshoorn, I think Chairperson let me also touch on that. It's not ideal that we as a department pay the municipalities directly. We prefer, where we've got funding agreement and arrangements with the municipality, to transfer the money, the grant, to the municipalities, and for the municipalities to actually pay their service provider. In the case of Oudtshoorn, we had transferred the funds to the municipality and they failed to pay the service provider. And I think it was, 3 months. There was a delay of about 3 months. And when we followed up what happened, and they could not even give us a recon to confirm that the money that we had transferred was in their account. This was also shortly after the provincial intervention, when the municipality was placed under administration. So we then resolved to rather pay the contractors directly, because we did not want service delivery to be hampered. So that is the reason why we intervene at a municipal level, where they fail to pay the service providers, whether be it consultants or contractors. If we've transferred the grant and on following up the money, we see that they have not paid, and in certain instances, these service providers, they contact us directly to inform us that they've done the work, it has been certified by all the relevant parties, and yet the municipalities are not transferring, and then we are duty bound to make sure that we intervene and transfer and pay the service providers for the work that they have done. In terms of the other questions, Chairperson, I will then hand over to the CFO and Melvin to just respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting HOD. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Mrs. Maseko. On the refunds, yes, over the past couple of years, we actually got refunds to about 250 million rand back, and from municipalities where money was transferred, projects were completed, reconciled, and then the money must be paid back to the department in cases where we paid the resolution amount, and then the actual cost was less. So we are quite successful in that regard. Twice we had claims that we had to funds that we had to claim back where the money was not utilized for the intended purpose. This year we received a 4 million rand back. That was long outstanding, and in the past we also had a 29.6 million rand that was also paid back in payments to the Department of Human Settlements. But we get into a payment arrangement, and if needed, we will include the Provincial Treasury to assist us to recover the money. So we are quite successful. The Beaufort West one, and that specific one, we did an investigation. Beaufort West, the contract was actually, the funding arrangement was actually very bad, and we will not stand in court to claim that money back. We got value for that, and we are just assessing the final, make a final assessment of the value of the work that was done, and then we will offset it against that 1.9 million rand. But we will come back to the committee through our annual financial statements in the next financial year, where that will reflect. Mr. America, Member America, just on the current statuses, as you will see, it's all positive. And sometimes we as government, we will sit in an office in Cape Town, and we will dictate to municipalities and think they've got everything in place and they understand what we want. So that's what happened. I think what happened in these cases, we implement procedures and controls without proper communication to them. And with us following the money, visiting the municipalities, we understand what the problems are. We fix it and move forward. So I think at the current moment, we also get information from the Provincial Treasury on a quarterly basis, whereby the municipalities submit their balances to the treasury, and we compare that with our figures that has been submitted to us by the respective MMs. Then, yeah, right, okay, why, and Peter has dealt nicely with Oudtshoorn. We must all just remember that this is currently an agency service. The municipalities perform this function on behalf of us, and we are still accountable. And all contractors in government, doesn't matter if it's local government, national government, or a provincial government, or public entities, must be paid within 30 days of when the invoice was rendered. So, or the service was rendered and the invoice was received. So we as accountable for that function, we must ensure that that clause of paying contractors directly was put in place with the consent and with the provincial treasury, and as part of the department's framework for the human settlements development grant that is part of the budgets. Member Allen asked, we've done a cost analysis to ensure what it costed to ensure compliances. There's about 1 billion rand each year that is out there by the municipalities, and if we look at what the visits cost, it's about 2,000 rand per person per visit, and we've done 11, and just say it's 2 in a team, so it's less than 100,000 rand that we spent, and I do believe that interaction with our officials at municipal level as well, that interaction does contribute to better working relationships and efficiencies in dealing with the financing of these projects. Yeah, I think that's all of it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, CFO. Honorable members, if there are no follow-ups or further question on this, Honorable Nkondlo.
Chair, thank you very much. I think I would be interested perhaps with a response from the HOD, because I think I take what the audit committee member in his explanation about maybe that word or term, community development forums, being a threat, should be removed in that report and actually speak about construction cartels, because it gives a general impression that community development forums in their current context, which is a structure of community of all the different stakeholders in the community, are a problem, which is not what is meant. I think he states that it's the construction cartels, which I think I take that. So I think that report needs to be altered, because in records that will have a different meaning. But I also want to understand, I think from the HOD, that I think from what I was listening from her response, it would seem that the social compacts that they are having with communities. I'm not sure how many communities, pardon me, I don't sit in the standing committee. I might not necessarily be affair with the details of how a human settlement operate. But it seems that this arrangement or approach of social compacts is not necessarily fulfilling, you know, the role it was intended for. Because when I listened to her to make the example of Joe Slovo working with the community for 10 years, and when the project must take place, some few people in that. So it means that social compact is no longer serving the purpose, because social compact, in my understanding, means the different parties that are there have got particular responsibilities, including community stability, which would mean whoever that is in that community must then ensure, you know, . to. So that is why I'm saying I am not sure if the concept of social compact is the one that is in the practical sense now being proved not to be working. Can the department maybe make that particular observation, or it is just one community? The social compact method is working in other communities, and if so, what are the conversations in the department about, resolving this? Because I hear you spoke about bringing even consultants to try and facilitate this, but it seems it's not working. Because I think we all are observing what is happening in communities, especially now with COVID, with pressures of communities, people not working and all of this. This becomes a serious contest. So it would mean projects in communities of housing, and related infrastructure are going to be under threat if indeed this and the financial aspect thereof, where either monies will have to be held back or monies won't be spent because of this particular macro environment issues. So I'm trying to understand the HOD, if you get my drift, whether indeed this concept or the approach of social compacting, is it proving to be a challenge to help the department implement with communities and their support, the housing related projects? And if so, what is the conversation in the department or together with the communities you are putting in place to try and rescue this particular situation? And lastly, Chair, I hear, and I think the CFO might have missed what I was raising. For me, it's either here nor there that you have to pay within 30 days. That's not the question here. The question is, what are the challenges in those municipalities? What is making them not to pay? Because it is even in the HOD's response indicated that that municipality, did not pay, and I'm assuming that they had the money. That's the assumption. It may be corrected. From the department, they received the money to pay the contractors. So if they didn't pay the contractors, what was making them, what did they withheld the money to pay the contractors? What exactly was the problem? And is that problem fixed? Because paying the contractors within 30 days, it's okay, because you save the policy commitment of government that says pay within 30 days. So that is commendable. But it doesn't, for me, it doesn't answer what is the problem in that particular municipality. Where is the CFO of that municipality? Where is the municipal manager of that particular municipality, let alone, the political structure, to be accountable when such is not being done? Because you don't want a big brother intervention. Every time a municipality is not paying, you will come in as a department because you've got that particular provision. The issue is fix the problem. And the problem is in the municipality, and understanding why the municipality is not paying, if it has reasonable, justifiable reasons for them not to pay, if there's something like that. So I think that is what I'm missing in my question, because my question was about what exactly was the causes of why these municipalities are not compliant with the rules that are known to them when these monies were handed over to them. What is the problem in those municipalities? Thank you, Chair.
I see the CFO's hand is up.
Chairperson, thank you. Thank you, Member Gondlu. Pilar did indicate that the municipality, that was the time when the municipality was placed under administration. The money was not in the accounts anymore, but it was used to pay other accounts, for instance, Eskom and so on. I don't know exactly which accounts they were paid, but they had a problem with Eskom, and they couldn't pay because the money was utilized for other payments of other expenses of the municipalities. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very serious. They been given money for one thing and they use it for something else. Acting HOD.
Thanks, Chairperson. I think Member Gondlo is quite correct in her analysis, but I would state that the social compact in the current form are not problematic. I think it's just few bad apples within this community. And you're quite correct, Member Ngondlo, in that it's a very contested space. It's a very contested space because communities think they would have a final say in who gets allocated a house. They would have a final say in where the work, to who the work is allocated to in terms of the socio-economic empowerment targets that we include in our contracts. So the social compacts, they work. In some municipalities, it's working very well, and we're even able to close off projects, and we still continue to have very strong and good relationships with those communities. It is a conversation that we need to have broadly within the department and with our also with our other stakeholders, including the local municipalities themselves, so that we can try and find a solution to this, because there is a high level of intimidation as well. I mean, case in point, we only signed a social compact for the Zwelihle project in Skalbok in Hermanas just last week, a process that took 2 years. And again, it's because people have got their own interests and they're wanting to pull in all sorts of different directions, and there was a high level of intimidation as well. So we do need to find a way. Right now, we do not have a clear solution on how we would deal with these issues, because I mean, the communities will come to us and say, it's all good and well for you to say, we as the leaders, we need to make sure that everybody sticks to the rules of engagement, as it were, but you are not here when we are intimidated and when these people come and threaten our lives and our families. So it is a very sensitive issue, and that one which requires us to find some sort of a way of resolving together with our partners. Member Bond. Thanks, Chairperson.
It's the follow-up, Honorable Maseko.
Yeah, Chair, not per se follow-up, it's just a remark that, you know, with what Member Nkondlo is raising, I think it's a very genuine concern. What I will request, maybe it will be one of the resolutions, is also to take it to the standing committee of the local government so that we can understand the challenges that the municipalities are not doing the right things of some of the municipalities, to explain why their payment schedules are not what is expected, and why do they use some monies for what is not intended, and to take it forward to hear the challenges, because there might be challenges we don't know, and I tend to believe the department is a little bit difficult for them to answer on behalf of the those municipalities that are doing things in a wrong way. And that is my take, that let's, on the resolutions, try to send it to the local government to check if they can attend to that on our behalf. And then we will check on the next annual report if the same things are happening without even though the department has tried to intervene in addressing those problems. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Maseko. Honorable members, if there are no further comments, that means that we have come to the end of the presentation of the Department of Housing. Let me make use of the opportunity to thank the Minister and the HOD, CFO, and the rest of the staff members that form part of their delegation for always being available whenever we are actually calling on them, especially you, Honorable Minister. In spite of your busy schedule, I know you did not really have an easy time in your hometown in Bito. It was not easy, but you've managed at least also to make time to attend the meeting. Thank you very much. You can be excused now.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and members. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Now, while the department is preparing to leave and leaving, I see the HOD is already here of the Provincial Treasury, Mr. Savage. We did receive apologies. I think Mr. Davids indicated that from the minister who was unable to attend. I think without any waste of time, honorable members, I'm going to hand over to the treasurer.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. Good afternoon to the members. We have a team here from the Provincial Treasury to address the issues that were posed. Just to note that this is also a follow-on discussion from a previous briefing that we gave to the committee, both on the broader framework for supply chain management and public procurement. And I think we'd also traversed some aspects of the Provincial Treasury strategy in that regard. And we're going to use this presentation, I think, to drill into a little bit more of the detail on issues of local content within the regulatory framework as it exists now. But also in terms, because your procurement reform is not something that is a light switch. It's something you have to work relentlessly at, and that's what our strategy as the Provincial Treasury is intended to do. So we just wanted to end, I think, also with touching on aspects of that strategy and the progress that we're making in it, because ultimately the varying parts of the strategy work together to get the public procurement outcomes that we are looking for, and it's captured very nicely in section 217 of the Constitution. So we have a team here led by Mr. Isaac Smith, supported by Mr. Rodney Mulman and Ms. Tasneem Rakib, who are going to take us through the presentation, but I will be here as well. And yes, of course, the Minister did indicate that he wasn't he was unfortunately not available for this. So let me hand over without further ado to Mr. Smith.
Thank you, HOD, and also good afternoon to the chairperson and members of the committee. I just want to make sure that the members are able to see the presentation.
Yes.
Okay. No, thank you, Chair. So the approach that we've taken, and as indicated by the HOD, is to just refresh your memory in terms of the presentation that we submitted to you at the last time in September 2020. There are a couple of slides that we just want to re-emphasize, and there's a bit of more information, also discussions that we had with some other bodies, but then also just to give you an indication how this fit in within the bigger environment of supply chain within the Western Cape environment. Next slide. So in terms of this slide, again, just to that this is the legislative environment as far as procurement is concerned. And we basically talk about preferential procurement because it actually dictates all activities with regard to procurement that we as a government is involved in. Just in terms of the PFMA and the MFMA, just the role that the Provincial Treasury is playing. As far as the PFMA is concerned, as a Provincial Treasury, we have got the power to direct. So our environment within a departmental context is a bit more stable than within the municipal environment, because the Provincial Treasury has only the power to guide and to assist and to mobilize some initiatives to influence governance within the municipal environments. Just also to indicate to you that as far as the directions are concerned to departments, apart from what you see at this point in time, we also issue Provincial Treasury instructions, and then also, as we call it, the accounting officer guide, to ensure that we've got a standardized approach within a provincial environment, whilst, as I've said, we try to give the same kind of support to municipalities, but at the end of the day, it is a decision that each and every municipality need to make. Next slide. As far as the next slide is concerned, it's just again the process prescribed by the Act. I think what is important is to give you a bit of more insight into the different set of regulations. The first one was issued in 2011, and it actually includes the local content as one of the goals of the RDP. The second reiteration of the regulations was in 2011, and what we've seen coming through, and that one which was a bit more enforced with the 2017 one, is where the local content was also seen separately and being a separate target as well. So over the years, over the last 20 years, we've seen 3 iterations of the regulations, which somehow in certain aspects is different to what the Act had in mind as far as the 10 points and 20 points is concerned for RDP goals. Next slide. The next slide is just again the reference to the 2017 regulations. Wafika, will you be able to change this to the next slide? About the 2017 regulations and also the new thresholds that has been implemented. What is, of course, of importance and where it differs from previous regulations is particularly the competing areas within preferential procurement. As with the Constitution, there are 5 areas that we focus on in terms of competitiveness, transparency, and so on, where we have to decide, in terms of which particular area we're going to drive, because it's impossible to drive all 5 areas. The same is with preferential procurement. The functionality basically speaks about the ability to do the job. In terms of the pre-qualification, there's targeting of particular 51% Black-owned, women-owned, disabled is in that category, military veterans. And then, of course, the subcontracting, where the National have indicated that as when that is feasible, that we at least need to subcontract 30%. And then, of course, the local content and all of these socioeconomic objectives, of course, competing with one another. The point system has not changed. However, the thresholds have changed. The thresholds for the 80-20 have been increased from 1 million to 50 million, which of course it's a major impact in terms of any possible premiums that we need to pay. In the Western Cape, we've included quite a number of areas that we're implementing so that we make sure that there's the premium that we pay as a Western Cape is not as huge, and we've invested quite a bit in terms of our supplier database, which I will talk to later on. Next one. So what we've done here, we've thought that maybe it's just important to give the committee also a rundown in terms of our procurement spend. So for the last financial year ending the end of March, what you'll see that we nearly spent about 12 billion through procurement and on suppliers. And of the 12 billion, a considerable amount was spent within the Western Cape in itself. So you'll also see that on the left-hand side at the top, that about just over 7 billion was spent within the Western Cape. As you can see, it's 61%. And then you'll also see the different districts in the metro where we've spent our money. And we've decided to give you also this particular view because when we talk about regional and local development, we not only look as far as sectors that's designated, but also in terms of our whole procurement spend within the province. In fact, if you unpack that 12 billion, you will see only about 30% of that 12 billion is actually products. And the local contents focus on products. It does not focus on services. So hence, we've got a more holistic approach when it comes to procurement, local procurement, that it also includes services rendered. And as you can see, the intention is to ensure that whatever we spend, but in the Western Cape, that, those within the Western Cape benefit from there. As you can also see, the second largest area where our money is going is Gauteng. And then, of course, that includes particular the medical consumables and pharmaceutical items, as the larger industry for that is within the northern parts of the country. Also, just to indicate to you our collective approach that we've followed. What we've done over the last 18, 19 years, because we've implemented our database way back in 2002, 2003, is to focus where are our suppliers registered, where are our suppliers coming from. And we've got, apart from the central supplier database, we've got a Western Cape supplier database, which we've renamed as the Western Cape Evidence, not to be confused with the National Central Supplier Database. And over the last 20 years, we as a government, and a particular provincial treasury with the assistance of the departments, have done extensive work in communicating our supply chain strategies with businesses within the Western Cape, sessions with municipalities, where we had all the relevant players involved, like SARS and so on. So we've invested quite a lot, because we believe that if we've got control of our supplier database, and this information basically proves that, we will be able to give the necessary information to the decision makers, and also to indicate in terms of where we're spending our money. Also, what we've done over this last couple of years or decade within the provincial environment, and also with the municipalities, is to ensure that we have a solid system of supply chain management, where we not only focus on the governance, we're also focusing on strategic sourcing or strategic procurement, which of course include looking at local economic development and ensuring that, that the necessary empowerment is happening in the different districts, the capacity building, but particularly on using technology to ensure that the engagement with the Western Cape government is seamless. So we've given you this snapshot that you can also see that, local content is within the bigger realm of the procurement spend within the Western Cape government. Next slide. So this is also just depicting the slide in a different format as well. And as I've indicated, the local content is part of the broader framework of preferential procurement. This does also give you an indication in terms of the nearly 12 billion, how much we spend on small businesses. So where you see EME, that's emerging small businesses, and where you see QSE, that is qualifying small businesses. So as you can see there, that we spend about 6.35 billion of our money on small businesses. And if you also take into account that some of those businesses, apart from the fact that their turnover is less than 10,000 and they've got 100% BEE level, they also, some of them are also, or the most of them are also 51% black owned. And where you also then can see that more than 54% of our contracts goes to companies that are more than 51% black owned. As I've said, because of the investment in our supplier database and knowing who we're dealing with and what products these suppliers are providing, and also where they're situated, we are able to generate this kind of information that we can also then produce it, as I said, to the decision makers. And as I said, of importance is also the amount of money that we spend on emerging enterprises and also qualified small enterprises. Next one. So I will dwell a little bit more now on the local content. You've seen the slide at the last presentation, and all that it depicts is that because of the local content legislation that's been issued and the requirements to qualify, there's a whole process that involves departments, the Provincial Treasury, the Department of Trade and Industry, and also the Department of National Treasury, and which also involved the SABS at the end of the day, who is responsible to ensure that products are verified. And this is one of the areas, of course, which has an impact on service delivery. Particularly in the municipal environment, I do believe that on a departmental environment, we've moved ahead quite well, but we do still struggling within the municipal environment because of the number of commodities or designated sectors that has impact on the municipal environment. So the next two slides, Chair, this is new slides. Where we've also depicted 28 designated sectors that's been identified by the Department of Trade and Industry. And although the go-to department for these sectors is the Department of Trade and Industry, it is actually the National Treasury that's issuing the instructions, and in itself you can probably see that there might be problems, because we deal as a provincial treasury with the National Treasury, but the authority for the designated sectors is actually the Department of Trade and Industry. You will also see in terms of the minimum thresholds that we've identified there, quite a number is 100%, which means that if a product is not 100% locally manufactured, we as a government is not allowed to purchase that unless there's exemption from the Department of Trade and Industry. And of course, this also resulted in quite a bit of problems as far as service delivery is concerned, which means that particularly on the municipal side, we had to go out on tender again to hope finding companies that's 100%. Unless we've got that exemption from the Department of Trade and Industry. Quite a number of these sectors is not applicable to the provincial departments. There are a couple, particularly in the health department, and one or two within the municipal education environment. But quite a number of them it's also applicable to SOEs as well. So this just gives you an indication in terms of those sectors for local content. What are the sectors that's been designated and which we need to adhere to within provincial and local government context? Next slide. Just in terms of the COVID environment, that's covered as far as the PPE is concerned. These are the areas with regard to PPE, which of course had also impact in terms of our purchasing over the last year, that it's covered by the designated sectors. And then there are also other non-designated PPE commodities, which we've also tried to make sure that that we push the adherence to the local content environment. Next one. So just in terms of the applicable sectors, Chair, as indicated, since 2012, 28 sectors, not all of them are applicable to departments and municipalities. As far as the pharmaceutical products are concerned, that's mostly arranged by the National Department of Health to the National Treasury. And they, of course, have then the responsibility to ensure that the local content regulations are being adhered to. And then, of course, if we look at rolling stock and set-top boxes, that's not necessary items that we purchase within a municipal and within a departmental context. Next slide. The next slide, Chair, is also a slide that we presented. That's slide number 11 that we presented on the 18th of September. But I just want to, again, maybe one or two items highlight that. The one is, of course, the two pieces of legislation.
Sorry. Can we move to slide 11?
Wafika, are you able to do that?
Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
No, that's 9. Forward. 11, yeah. In terms of that particular slide that was presented, maybe just 1 or 2 issues again that I want to highlight is still the 2 pieces of legislation. So where the 2001 regulations only focus on preferential procurement, the 2011 regulations brought in some aspects of the BEE, and then of course the 27 regulations even have gone further. And there is anomalies between the 2 sets of legislation. The issue of 100%, just next to that, which I've said, if it's not compliant, of course, it has an impact on service delivery. And what we found there is that the market in itself, it's not always prepared when we approach the market to the bidding system to respond to those products. And then on the left-hand side, in the middle, the ex post facto verification and certification. So we're sitting with a problem that as procurement officials, you need to evaluate the product, but that product has not yet been verified by the South African Bureau of Standards, and you need to take that into account, make a decision, and possibly get approval later on. What that also entails, and there will be in one of the slides a point on basically non-compliance. If that happens and the auditors become aware that suppliers have lied, or they have provided incorrect information, that is then registered as irregular expenditure within the books of the departments and municipalities. So you can understand the sensitivity around the verification of the products. Next slide. So in the next slide, again, what we've done as a provincial government in terms of our response to national on the issues that we've raised, the support that we provided to departments and municipality. And we're currently also part of the governance work group with National Treasury to discuss some of these policy imperatives that have got the impact on service delivery within departments and municipalities. And again, just to the last point that we are making, that we as a Western Cape government focus overall on local suppliers, and it's not limited to local content and production, which only focus on products and not necessarily on services. Also taking into account within a provincial environment, as I've said, 30% of our spend is basically on products, while the rest is on construction and services within the various departments. Next slide. Also, as far as the next slide is concerned, we also had discussions in terms of this work group with National Treasury on how to handle some of these anomalies and interpretation, particularly from a audit perspective. Of course, we've informed the committee of the SCA ruling on preferential procurement, where certain aspects of the regulations were regarded as unconstitutional and unlawful. The National Treasury has informed us that they will take on that particular ruling and have instructed us to stay with the existing environment, the 2017 regulations, of course, which we are adhering to in the municipal and the departmental environment. The next item that I want to address is, of course, the guidance from the treasuries. So as I've indicated, the guidance, basically, it's a bit non-existent from National Treasury, because this area of expertise lies with the Department of Trade and Industry. Another aspect, Chair, is on the second row, on the left-hand side, is the fact that, and this is an issue that was picked up particularly in the municipal environment, with the AG, where even if it's a fraction of the total contract, if it involves one of the designated areas, then you need to subject the whole contract to that, and that has led to quite a lot of disputes within the audit environment between ourselves and the auditor. So that's just a couple of issues that I wanted to highlight. The others is just to give you a flow in terms of some of the issues that's still problematic. Of course, the main issue for suppliers is the cumbersome documents that they need to complete to ensure that they adhere to all of those requirements. So we're also not making the life of the suppliers, particularly the small suppliers, easy. Next slide. Also a bit of sector-specific challenges within our Department of Health is particularly the brands that's not updated, which means if the instruction notes needs to be implemented, there are items that's not necessarily part of that list. Furniture being another part where our departments are involved. It's only 11 products that is covered, whilst there's a range of a number of items. So it's not the whole commodity-based approach. It's only certain areas that also creates a bit of confusion. And then, of course, the security services. When we procure security, it is as a service, and then it's the responsibility of the service providers to supply that, and we don't necessarily buy that. I think another issue that lately have become a problem is where there are turnkey projects involved. For instance, within the construction industry, and where it involves steel products. That's part of the designated sectors, and how departments need to specify that in the bids, because we do not necessarily buy the material ourselves. We buy the completion of a building, and the companies quote according to a bill of quantities, and that is all included in there. So it does become problematic, but we found some ways and means, particularly with the Department of Transport and Public Works, to ensure that that some of those items is specified when we deal with the various construction companies. Next one. This is also some challenges on the textile and clothing and leather industry. Quite a number of the products within the health department is subject to this designated area. Our textile industry and clothing industry was very strong in the past. Still, what we experience, there are still a number of companies that's operating in that particular discipline in the Western Cape, but still we're struggling with some of the areas, particularly in terms of material, whether the material is manufactured in South Africa or whether it's imported. And then, of course, it's difficult when the middlemen provide us with offers that they are unable to also supply us with the manufacturing detail of the material, because they're also in direct competition with the manufacturers in this particular industry. So that is just some of the problems that we've seen. Next slide. The next slide is just some of the initiatives, particularly within a municipal environment. As I've said, we've got more issues on a municipal environment than within a provincial environment, where we have continuous training sessions involving the Department of Training, of Trade and Industry, and I must also say that that department is always available when we need to set up sessions with them, also understanding that in some of these areas it is difficult to comply with all the legislation as far as local content is concerned, and also the fact that the market is not always ready in those 28 sectors to respond to our requirement. Of course, road shows, it's part of the DNA of the Provincial Treasury, where we liaise with the Department of Economic Development, SAPS, and having these kind of road shows that we make sure that, you know, that we unpack these requirements, and so that our suppliers, when they deal with us, that they've got a good understanding in terms of the legislation involved. Next slide. The next slide is just under COVID specific items. You can go forward, Wafika. In some of the issues that became applicable from a local content. Initially, we found it to be problematic because it was enforced from an immediate impact. And as I've said, it's not always the fact that that local suppliers are ready to respond to that. However, within the Western Cape environment, and you might have heard of some of the investigations, our COVID-19 governance in terms of PPE has been in a controlled environment because, as I've said, that we've built a system within the Western Cape environment where which allow departments to be resilient and to respond to any difficult situation, where we've built in emergency procurement policies. Apart from the database, we've got the e-procurement system, which make it easier for the departments to access the market, because we do not work on a three-quote system. And that meant that from a COVID-19 perspective, you know, our governance were in place. Just the next slide, which was also in the last spec in September. Next slide, Wafika. Is particularly the comment that I've made, and in the middle in bold, the comment that I've made, where even if a fraction of that particular service or product involves any of the 28 sectors, and this is the example where the value of the contract was 107 million within the city. And it included 4 valves to the amount of 100,000, that the city was forced to apply the local content requirements, which of course from our particular point in view is a fraction of the total bid price, and it should not have happened, but that is currently how it's been applied within our environment. And of course, it does have an impact on service delivery and delay in these kind of projects. Next slide. So just the next slide, we've tried to give you a further breakdown in terms of what we're doing, taking into account that this particular discipline will always be challenging, because of the fact that each and every product that's on that list of the 28 sectors still needs to be verified by the SABS, which we found did not have or do not have the capacity to deal with all these issues. So from a provincial perspective, we've got the center-led strategy, which Nadia would have probably spoke about in the last session on the 18th of September. And that is to make sure that we've got uniformity and standardization. We've implemented now a procurement planning a toolkit, which is also linked up to the budget. So it is required from each and every department to indicate beforehand in the beginning of the financial year what are the products that they will drive, and also what will be the target areas as far as preferential procurement is concerned, which of course include local content in those 28 areas that's applicable to departments. A part of our focus is also on empowerment impact assessments. And this is one of the areas that we've over the last couple of years focused on. So apart from what's included in the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act, as a government and as an administration, we particularly focus on the value add. Instead of just targeting an area that's included in the Preferential Procurement Policy, we look at the commodity per se and see, you know, what are the developments in that particular commodity. And I just want to make use of 2 commodities to just explain to you why we've taken that approach. If we look at the security industry within the Western Cape, So it's a multi-million rand industry, but we found in our analysis that the bulk of those suppliers, it's already 100% black owned. So if that's the case, the question is then what's the other empowerment initiatives that you need to look at? So it comes back to the value add. We're finding the same environment with the transport of learners, which we've got looking at the supplier base, we also see that's a similar trend as the security industry. And hence, once you look at any empowerment target, it needs to be impactful. So that is one of the reasons why the focus is on that. And then, of course, I spoke about the trade-offs, the socioeconomic trade-offs that one need to decide. We've built strong relationships over the years with DTIC, SEPS and NT, but what we've also done recently, we had sessions with Proudly South Africa, because we do believe that they can assist us in areas where we had problems. We've also indicated to them that we will provide them with information. They will also provide information to the Treasury, where they believe that departments and municipalities have advertised bids but haven't included that local content requirement. So if we've built now a relationship with Proudly South Africa, and we do believe that will help quite a lot. And then, of course, we've got, as we call it, the local economic development in Dabas, in the municipalities, and we're linking our procurement strategy with that as well. We've also involved with quite a number of municipalities with Drakenstein on a contracted development program. And then just recently, we also joined them with the supply development session, where we, of course, in the past was driven ourselves, but it is quite positive, the fact that our municipalities is also taking responsibility for local economic development in their particular area. Just then, Chair, the last slide. The last slide just gives an indication as a provincial treasury, where will be our focus areas as we going ahead. Our focus is on business intelligence and technology, apart from providing reports to citizens so that they can have more insight in our procurement spend. Part of our initiative is also providing that similar kind of reports to departments. We currently looking at the data and information on a municipal space, so that we can also provide the same kind of service to them. The procurement planning toolkit, as I've indicated, that's also digitalized. And hopefully by the end of this financial year, we will have much better information to our disposal. As far as the e-procurement is concerned, you're well aware of the fact that we've got the e-procurement system running in the Western Cape, the first of its kind as far as the provinces are concerned. And we're running that system for the last 20 years. And as we go along, and as legislation changes, as we become used to the industries, we have improved on the system in itself. We've made now a decision that system will be taken in-house, because we always had a third party involved in running the system. As we've brought the running of the Western Cape Supplier database or evidence bank in-house, we're also doing this year, and hopefully within the next 3 months we would have implemented the system. But then also what we've also looking at is to extend the usage of the system, not limiting it to the 500,000 value or 1 million, as it's been increased just recently by the National Treasury, but also include all procurement and bids, so that we can have that information available. And then, of course, the focus on strategic sourcing and transversal contracting, to make sure that that we get the best value for our buck, where we're looking at at commodities that's been used across the board by departments and putting one contract together. However, what we do in doing that, so that we make sure that there's no monopoly, is building all the empowerment initiatives in those commodities. And a good example is the security a transversal contract which we've arranged, and where we've got about 20 companies that's actually involved in that particular focus. Then, of course, the last one, the local economic development, specifically in assisting with economic recovery, our relationships with municipalities, and with the LED units with municipalities, and how we can use procurement as a lever for economic development. And of course, importantly, that we make available the database of supplies and also the commodities that's covered within our environment. So, Chair, this is what we're looking at going forward. So where in the initial couple of years, our focus was quite a bit on governance and capacity building. And as we called it, it's more a type of a enforcing role. We're looking at the more enabling role where we focus on supply chain technology and, of course, strategic sourcing. And one of the areas is that we want to make it easy for businesses to deal with the Western Cape government, and hopefully within a couple of years, suppliers will be able to liaise with us just through their smartphones, in terms of all the information that's available to them and access to procurement opportunities within the Western Cape. So, Chair, that is from my side the conclusion of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. That was a full hour presentation, local content and loaded with content. Now, honorable members, there is the presentation that has been made in front of you. Are there any questions, point of clarity, or comments that you'd like to make on the presentation? Or is it straightforward to a point where it leaves you with no question, and bearing in mind that it's actually not the first time? I know there has been some couple of amendments I've seen in the presentation, which I knew, but it's something that we are all kind of familiar with. Are there any questions, honorable members? I think it's going once. There is Honorable Nkondlo. Honorable Nkondlo.
Chair, can you hear me?
I see Honorable America. Yeah. Can you go in that order, honorable members? Honorable Nkondlo, then Honorable America.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, honorable member.
Oh, thank you. No, thanks for the presentation. Chair, I think for me, having listened to the presentation on local content, and indeed very loaded, I've just have a few issues I would like to understand. One is the concept of premium, the premium that I think kept being referred to, which the Western Cape had to manage. If such can be explained, what does that mean, and how, in terms of calculations, how do you arrive at that particular premium, and what are the variables that are considered when one defines the premium to application of local content? Secondly, Chair, I'm interested to understand that in the designations that have been mentioned, which are DTI, but obviously National Treasury in terms of implementation, is that in the Western Cape, in as far as those designations are concerned, is there some kind of an information or a report that could give us an indication that in each designated product, because I think in the main, the presenter was saying, you know, whilst the services are not included, it's only products. So in those 21 designated products, can we get an indication of the performance of the province in as far as managing to have local suppliers from the province in as far as that is concerned across those, so that one is able to pick up where, if you say in the security sector, as an example, that as the province, you know, we are ahead, or we do have from the supply side local suppliers that are able to fulfill that particular requirement, and on a particular, let's say, the transport goods, if there is any designation in that regard, or the school furniture as an example, if one has those local suppliers. So I just want to understand if there is such an information that one can be able to access to understand where are we in terms of the local capability, you know, to sort of meet up the demand from the provincial procurement, and including nationally, if that is there. The last one, Chair, is that on the empowerment elements that are being mentioned, I hear the issue of black suppliers as one element, you know, of equity that is being attended to. And I'm interested to just check whether, what about the issue of which is also in the empowerment targets, the issue of women, the issue of youth, the issue of people with disability enterprises, because I think these are some of the discussions that I think we pick up. I mean, we were just now with human settlements, and we know, I think a couple of months ago, we had a conversation with in the construction space, especially in terms of building of houses, that there is currently a challenge in terms of getting women-owned construction companies, which I may not know whether it's part of the designation, but I'm just saying, if you just look at the local supply markets, what is the situation, let alone youth participation. So I'm interested to understand in terms of those empowerment targets or empowerment indicators, are those also considered to check whether from a profiling point of view, are we making headways? Because the intent of the local policy content, the local policy itself, is to try and build local capability, so that one, you sort of moderate between what the country needs to get, you know, outside its boundaries, and building the local capacity. So I'm trying to understand those broad issues, Chair, if there is any clarity, and if maybe there is information that could be sent to us. I'm still even okay with that, maybe in as far as that is concerned. Thank you.
Honorable America.
Thank you, Chair, for this presentation. I think it is fairly, you know, sort of contextualize the question of local content, but we must express our sort of gratitude towards the Treasury in terms of, I think it was the third or second slide, in terms of the extraordinary lengths that they go through to be compliant with this Leninist tendencies of DTI to you're laughing, Chair. You know, it's your government, national government, with this Leninist tendencies. In terms of the bizarre sort of illogical requirements at times that and the presenter has, and we have dealt with this before, where a fraction of a huge contract doesn't comply with local content, then the whole contract is regarded as irregular and wasteful expenditure. It's completely outrageous to have such an approach towards procurement. But from my side, the question I'd like to ask in terms of how does the other provinces that's largely controlled by these Leninist tendencies, how do they comply with this onerous legislation, given you know, the sort of constraints that they may also experience? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable America. You know, your last part of the question, you know, would have been better answered in the national parliament. But anyway, let's leave that for another time. Sorry, HOD.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, honourable members, for the questions. I will defer to my vastly more specialised colleagues than myself for some more of the details of the answers. But Honourable Nkondlo had asked the question of Premier on procurement that may be associated with local content provisions, and I think what my colleague was referring to was essentially just basic economic principles. If you restrict supply while demand doesn't change, that's going to shift prices in the market. And if you do that through a regulatory instrument, it's going to generate a premium. There are many variables that go into that, and it's very difficult to actually measure, as you can imagine, because we're only left with the final settled price on a good, and we're not benchmarking against what would happen in a competition that was differently structured than one which has a local content requirement in it. But we do, however, are always alerted to by municipalities or departments to the anecdotal incidents, and we are actually looking at how we can begin to better benchmark the trade-offs that are being made in the system, because we want a net efficient outcome. Now, some of the variables may only be present for a period of time as the market reorients itself. So it really goes back to this the concept of a commodity lens, which is one thing that Mr. Smith is absolutely unambiguous about always when talking about procurement. You have to understand the market that you that you are interfacing with and how that market changes over time. But I'm sure he will speak more about that. On the question of the 21 designated products, my colleagues may well correct me if I'm wrong here, but at the moment we are only capable of generating the data at the aggregate level on local content, not at individual commodity level. But I think your questions are exactly right, because it underscores the importance, just the very question underscores the importance of taking a commodity view. I would just add to that you can't exclude, of course, South African suppliers. We're a unitary national economy that's protected by the Constitution. And so we have no mechanism to restrict suppliers to a local area or a province. The only way to do that is for them to differentiate themselves on a price basis, all other things being equal. You also asked the questions around other designated groups, women, youth, people with disabilities, and of course military veterans. Those are issues that are more closely associated with the preferential procurement policy framework than the local content side. So we haven't brought information on that along today. It does, of course, require you to build the systems that we're in the process of building. In order to be able to manage towards the outcome you want, you've got to be able to measure it. And so we certainly are building those systems, and my colleagues can provide further details on that. So I think both of those questions, Honourable Nkondlo, really do reflect on the importance of the broader strategy and about getting the parts of our supply chain reform strategy to work together. And it's no easy feat because this is a complicated environment. But comfortable that we're well on the way. And I just want to reiterate the point that Mr. Smith had made, that we are moving away from just focusing on compliance and enforcement to actually enablement and the incentives systems, the support to supply chain teams and line managers in departments and municipalities on this. With respect to Honourable America, I won't respond, of course, to your first comment. There are challenges, I think, that in a complex regulatory environment. I think Mr. Smith has outlined them. Some of them are at the conceptual level. I mean, if you're creating quite specific positive lists of items, well, you've got to make sure that the regulatory framework remains very agile and you understand what is excluded and what is included, including when certain suppliers alter their operations in the market or go out of business or whatever it might be. So you can very, very quickly lead yourself into a trap of targeting errors of inclusion and exclusion in the market through an overly detailed positive listing of items, and that is certainly one of the challenges that are being experienced. We're unfortunately not able to comment on other provinces. I mean, of course, we do keep abreast of where other provinces are struggling. This is a very similar set of issues. I would say that our supply chain team, having been quite relentlessly built up over the last years in the Treasury, is a front runner, I think, among provincial administrations in both strategy and the results that we generate. So and I think some of my colleagues may want to add any perspectives they have on particular areas where other provinces are struggling or succeeding, so forth. But we obviously watch that with a beady eye and collaborate with them wherever we can, as well as with National Treasury. Over to you, Isaac.
No, thank you, HOD. Maybe just a couple of comments from my side to Member Nkondlo. As far as local content is concerned, I think from a provincial treasury perspective, we know that that is one area that we need to focus on a little bit more. Hence, we started the engagement with bodies like Proudly South Africa. Of course, we're not making the legislation. We're in the execution phase, and part of our strategy was always to make it easier for the suppliers to deal with us. Hence, I spoke about a solid supply chain system that we've developed over years within the province, and the tools that we've implemented to make it easier. As the HOD have indicated, we do not have the granular level of information on the specific designated areas, but that is one of the areas that we've identified, and with the development of our BI tools, we would like to focus on that so that we can get the information that you require with the press of a button. Unfortunately, at this point in time, to get that information, we need to approach each and every accounting officer to provide us that information, and we've got no problem in doing that if that is a request from the committee. Just with reference to a premium. What we have seen is particularly on these designated areas, that prices will come in higher than what we've previously paid, because what you've done, you've actually limited competition, and we know, if there's it's all about demand and supply, and the less suppliers there are, it's a norm within the business industry that prices will increase. But we also don't want that to be part of our vocabulary. we want to implement systems that that actually eradicate that kind of rent in the procurement system. Hence, I spoke about the procurement tool. It's also important, as a purchasing authority, that we actually disclose to the market what we're going to buy on a given point in time. And once this procurement tool is working well within our environment, it is our intention to make that information available. That companies know what we will buy from a provincial perspective for the next year or so. And that, of course, will mean that companies can reorganize themselves and, that at the end of the day, provide better products to us also at a price where there's no premium involved. We talk about the premium because that's unintended consequences if you do not do an impact analysis and indicate, within this particular industry, that would be our approach. So I'm quite comfortable saying that in some of those initiatives that we've driven, that we actually haven't paid the premium because we have engaged the market extensively. And I want to again mention the security contract where we've targeted small businesses. We've also, from the start, involved them with specifications. So that is part of building a system that you actually develop your environment with the assistance of the supply market as well. So understanding the supply market, as the HOD have indicated, is important. What we've proposed to the Department of Trade and Industry is to have a similar kind of approach with BEE, that we can get then products certified at one particular point, maybe to the Department of Trade and Industry or the SABS, that suppliers don't need to go through this rigorous process, that you actually submit that with your bid, where the SABS confirm that that is a locally manufactured product. And through that will also really streamline the environment that we're currently dealing with. Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure, HOD, Rodney is on the team, on the work team with national, with other provinces, particular on the challenges, policy challenges, which include local content. And I'm not sure whether you would like to maybe just respond in the question that Member America have asked in terms of what is other provinces' experience, because we're subject to the same rules.
Rodney, please go ahead if you have anything to add.
Yes, I think that will assist in terms of seeing how.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of Parliament.
Okay. No problem, Rodney. Please go ahead. I think that will help us in terms of seeing how do provinces collaborate with each other in terms of addressing this.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think there is great collaboration amongst the provinces, and I want to indicate to the members that actually they are battling with the same challenges on the local content. And I just want to reiterate what Mr. Smith has indicated before, that even the case that we have in the Constitutional Court at this point in time would actually force the National Treasury to go back to the drawing board, especially with local content as well. But I just want to say that in other provinces, they have the same challenges. And it's come to a point that it's got a detrimental impact, and especially for municipalities across our country as far as the delivery is concerned.
Rodney, are you there? Rodney? Rodney?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, you back now.
Can you hear me, Jay?
Yeah, you back now. You were gone. You gone again. You back now.
Yeah, my apologies. My apologies. Can you hear me, Jay?
Yes.
Sorry, I was just indicating, Chair, if you can hear me, that in our engagement with other municipalities, with other provinces, that they also have the same challenges. I just wanted to read.
I think Rodney is struggling there.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not sure whether that's names because she is also on a work group at national with other provinces. Maybe from her side also give an indication in terms of the experiences from other provinces.
Tasneem, please go ahead. I think Rodney was struggling with his connection.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Smith. So we do sit on the SCM forum with the other provinces, and I think there are similar challenges and concerns across the provinces in terms of experience. And what we do is we do share best practices, particularly in terms of what we're doing in the Western Cape. With the other provinces. Obviously, the extent to which that has been implemented, I cannot necessarily speak to that, but I think we've shared what we've done, particularly in terms of putting certain mechanisms in place with the Department of Trade and Industry, creating that relationship with them. I think the National Treasury has also tried to build on that relationship where the TTI has done presentations at certain forums to assist all the provinces in terms of local content. But I think the reality is that there are challenges being experienced, particularly on the operational side of it, and taking into account where the Western Cape is in terms of maturity. I can only imagine what the other provinces are doing in terms of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful. I think most of the questions then, honorable members, seems to have been answered actually. I think just from my side in slide 16, because this issue of local content is very helpful in terms of assisting us in the transformation agenda of transforming our economy. It's all about really transforming the economy, really, that this issue of local content has been brought to being. And obviously, it's because it's a new thing, I know there will always be some challenges in terms of implementation and also even resistant to actually change. There's one of the, I don't think we'll also be doing justice on it now in the committee, because I must say the report that has been presented by the department is quite commendable and is very loaded, loaded with content. But obviously, I don't think in a meeting within a space of 40 minutes to an hour will do justice in terms of dissecting it and discuss it fully. But I've seen in the slide that is there now, there's something that is talking about a summit. I just wanted to check whether this summit, was it the initiative of the provincial government, or was it where we were actually joining in a summit where that was actually organized by the other entities or by another department? Because I think if something like that, a similar summit can be replicated in the province, just solely for people of the province. I see there have been also even training sessions with municipalities, there's also been workshop, but something like a summit might actually even assist us more. I just wanted to check that summit, whose initiative was it?
Chair, can I ask Rodney to respond?
Yes. Hey, I hope Rodney is back in line.
Thank you, Isaac. I hope that, Chair, you can hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Rodney.
Just to respond, and my apologies, Chair, I'm just making my way from the beautiful town of Franschhoek back to Cape Town. We had our governance works team and assisting municipalities today with all of the audit challenges. So my apologies for the break in transmission. I think very importantly, it was something that was initiated by ourselves and the CTICC. We are still working on it. COVID kept us back a little bit, but even the manager on the supply chain reconfirmed that we still want to go ahead and provide that opportunity as far as the summit is concerned. And key would be also the empowerment agenda and looking at local content and production as well. And to understand, I think what Mr. Smith has indicated, it's very important to understand the supply market by responding it, and to make sure that through the roadshows and all of the engagements that we get the supply community to also understand the challenges that we have internally as government. And I think there's much appreciation for that. Even in the Supply Expo that Mr. Smith indicated from Drakenstein, we spoke to a number of small businesses, and everybody's very hungry and eager to learn and to see to what extent they can be compliant. And I think that's the role that we as a provincial treasury want to play in this.
So basically, that was the initiative of the provincial government.
We were, Chair, a partner in that event. I wouldn't say that we were the lead in that event, but we were partnering with others. More recently, I think the Drakenstein event that Mr. Smith and Mr. Moolman were referring to was the initiative of the Drakenstein local municipality, and building on a lot of the ideas that had been generated from that earlier event. But as Mr. Moolman had said, we had been, our plans had slightly been thrown with COVID, because, in the past where we were able to pull people together into a venue, CTICC, we then weren't able to do that. But other parts of the broader strategy have remained in place, and so, one exciting backroom development, as it were, this year has been the rollout of an automated procurement planning system, which we are hoping is going to make our supply chain ever more visible to local businesses, so that they can plan well in advance for when opportunities might become available, and they can start to see our longer term intentions in that regard, rather than just purely a transaction view on advertisements. So there's a lot going on in this space. We have been delayed in the public space because of COVID, but the other parts are still moving.
Thank you very much, HOD. I suppose you finished.
Yes, sorry. Thank you. I finished.
Thank you very much, HOD. I think, honorable members, if there are no further questions or further follow-ups on this, I think most of the questions have been answered. And I think then if there are no further questions, as I can see on the screen, there seems to be no indication of members wanting to ask questions. Can I make use of the opportunity then to thank the Provincial Treasury, the HOD, together with your team, for always being available whenever we call you. This has been a very helpful session. I know, although it's not the first time that we have actually looked into this issue, but I must say every time you bring it, there's always a lot that we can actually learn, and there's a lot that we are actually gaining out of it. So thank you very much for always being available whenever we are actually calling on you. Thank you very much. You may be excused. Now I will ask the members of the committees and honorable members, to please remain. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much to the rest of you.
Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Whilst the officials are leaving, honorable members, I was actually going to suggest that then, because we've seen these two presentations, and there's actually going to be time to make resolutions. And also I was going to also request that, because they were supposed to be also dealing with minutes and other administrative issues of the committee, if I may request, if honorable members won't have a problem with that the issue of looking into minutes and also other reports as well that we need to look into, if we can actually refer those to our next meeting, which is going to be the last meeting before we go to recess and that one will also be starting in the morning. It won't be an afternoon meeting, and then we can deal with all the administrative issues that needs to be dealt with. And I will even suggest, even maybe if members got ideas of resolution, we can actually even leave those for that meeting. And then that will also give time for members to ruminate on the issues that were discussed. And also we can just finalize everything at our next meeting.
I agree with you, Chair.
Support that, Chair.
So that's progressive. At least you can see even Honorable America is agreeing with a Leninist on this one. No, thank you then, honorable members. If that is the case, that means that brings us to the end of the meeting and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, honorable.